The Battle of the Nile took place from August 1st to 3rd, 1798, during the French Revolutionary Wars, a time when France fought against powerful European countries like Britain. The battle happened in Aboukir Bay, along Egypt's coast. Though it was fought at sea, it was part of a bigger plan. The French wanted to take over Egypt and block Britain from reaching India, one of its most important trade partners. At the center of this plan was General Napoleon Bonaparte. He dreamed of expanding French power and cutting off British trade. In 1798, he led an army and a fleet of ships to Egypt. He brought not only soldiers, but also scientists, artists, and teachers to study the land and its ancient culture. While Napoleon moved inland, the French fleet, led by Admiral François-Paul Brouet, waited at sea near Alexandria. Britain, determined to stop Napoleon, sent Admiral Horatio Nelson to find and destroy the French fleet. Nelson was bold and clever, but had no exact maps. For weeks he searched the Mediterranean, determined not to give up. On August 1st, Nelson finally found the French fleet anchored in Aboukir Bay. The French ships were close to shore with their guns facing the sea. They felt safe, thinking no one would attack so near the coast. But Nelson surprised them. Instead of attacking from just one side, he split his fleet, sending some ships between the shore and the French line. The French were attacked from both directions. The battle began at sunset and raged into the night. Cannon fire lit up the sky. Nelson's unexpected strategy caused confusion among the French. By the next day, most of their ships were damaged, captured, or destroyed. Only a few escaped. One of the most dramatic moments came when the massive French warship L'Orient caught fire. It exploded in a giant ball of flames after the fire reached its gunpowder stores. The blast was so huge that people on both sides said it lit up the night like day. Nelson was injured during the battle, struck in the head by debris, but stayed on deck giving orders. He later praised his sailors, calling them a band of brothers. The battle was a major British victory and a disaster for France. Napoleon's army was stuck in Egypt, with no easy way back. Without control of the sea, his dream of expanding French power in the East collapsed. The battle showed the world how powerful and skilled the British Navy had become. Admiral Nelson became a national hero. People in Britain celebrated with songs, poems, and monuments in his honor. The battle didn't just shape the war, it protected British trade in India and gave hope to other nations resisting France. Imagine the sound of thundering hooves echoing through the vast desert, the sharp smell of dust and sweat filling the air as a cloud of sand rises behind a pair of powerful horses pulling a light wooden chariot across the battlefield. The warrior stands tall in the chariot, gripping a bow, ready to unleash a flurry of arrows. His driver, a master of control, expertly guides the horses, weaving through enemy lines with unmatched speed and precision. This is the heart of Egyptian warfare, a skilled chariot warrior navigating the battlefield with power, agility, and tactical brilliance. The chariot is not just a vehicle, it's an extension of the warrior's will. Cutting through the enemy ranks, its riders focused on swift strikes and strategic positioning. Chariots were not invented in Egypt. They first appeared in Central Asia and spread to other lands, including Mesopotamia. Around 1600 BCE, a group called the Hyksos brought the chariot to Egypt. The Hyksos were foreign rulers who took control of part of Egypt for a time. They used horse-drawn chariots in battle, and the Egyptians quickly saw how useful they were. When the Egyptians fought back and took back their land, they began using chariots themselves. The Egyptian chariot was light, fast, and strong. It had 2 wheels and was pulled by 2 horses. The body was made of wood and leather to keep it light. It had room for 2 men, one to drive and one to fight. The driver focused on guiding the horses, while the warrior used bows, spears, or axes to attack. Chariots were designed for speed and maneuverability, allowing the warriors to make quick turns and attack from unexpected angles. The horses used for pulling these chariots were typically strong, agile, and well-trained. They were often bred from horses brought in by the Hyksos, originally from the steppe regions of Central Asia. These horses were generally smaller but more suited for the quick pace required in battle. Training these horses was a careful and time-consuming process. The horses needed to be taught to run at high speeds while maintaining control, responding to commands from the driver during the heat of battle. They were trained to stop quickly, turn sharply, and sometimes even sprint in short bursts of speed to avoid enemy attacks or to chase down fleeing opponents. The horses were highly valued and often adorned with decorated harnesses and headpieces made of precious materials. These royal steeds were kept in stables near the palace and temples, and they were pampered, fed a rich diet to maintain their strength and speed. One of the most famous battles where Egyptian chariots played a big role was the Battle of Kadesh. It happened around 1274 BCE between Egypt and the Hittite Empire. The Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II led thousands of soldiers and hundreds of chariots. At first, the Egyptians were caught off guard by a surprise attack, but Ramses gathered his chariot warriors and fought back with great skill. The battle ended in a draw, but it showed the power and speed of chariot warfare. Chariots were used for more than just battle. They were also used in parades and hunting trips. Pharaohs loved to show off their chariots to prove their strength and bravery. Some tomb paintings show kings riding chariots while hunting lions or leading soldiers into battle. The chariots themselves were carefully built. Craftsmen used wood like elm and ash. The wheels had spokes and were covered in leather. The horses wore decorated harnesses. Chariots were stored in royal armories, ready to be used when needed. Some royal tombs even had model chariots buried inside, showing how important they were in both life and death. But chariot warfare did not last forever. Over time, new ways of fighting became more popular. Armies started using larger groups of foot soldiers and more advanced weapons. Eventually, the chariot was replaced by cavalry, soldiers who rode directly on horseback. Horses became stronger and better trained, so they no longer needed to pull chariots. Still, Egyptian chariot warriors left a big mark on history. They helped Egypt win battles and grow its empire. They showed how new ideas, like the chariot, could change the way people fought wars. Today we can see chariots and warriors painted on tomb walls, carved into temples, and even written about in ancient texts. The story of the chariot warrior is the story of bravery, speed, and skill. It reminds us that even in the ancient world, people were always learning, adapting, and finding new ways to be strong. Lighthouse of Alexandria. Imagine sailing across the Mediterranean Sea in ancient times. The sun is setting and the sky turns orange and pink. You are a trader bringing goods from faraway lands. As darkness falls, the coastline disappears. The sea is wide and deep, and sharp rocks wait near the shore. Then far in the distance you see a light, a strong, steady flame shining high above the water. As you get closer, a giant tower comes into view, rising from an island just off the coast. It is the Lighthouse of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, guiding sailors safely into the great harbor of Egypt. The Lighthouse of Alexandria, also called the Pharaohs of Alexandria, was one of the tallest and most famous structures in the ancient world. It was built on the island of Pharaohs, just outside the city of Alexandria, Egypt. The city had been founded by Alexander the Great around 331 BCE and quickly became one of the most important cities in the ancient world. It was known for its great library, its busy harbor, and its learning and culture. But Alexandria was also known for something else. Its lighthouse, a tower so large and powerful that sailors from all around the Mediterranean knew its name. The lighthouse was built during the reign of Ptolemy II, around 280 BCE. It was designed by an architect named Sostratus of Cnidus. The tower stood between 350 and 400 feet tall, about the height of a modern 40-story building. It was made of white stone and had 3 levels. The bottom level was square, the middle was octagonal, and the top was round. At the very top there was a fire that burned all night. Mirrors made of polished bronze reflected the light and sent a beam out over the sea. Some ancient stories even say the mirrors could focus sunlight during the day like a giant flashlight. The lighthouse wasn't just a light, it was a symbol of safety and welcome. It stood at the edge of Alexandria's harbor, helping ships avoid dangerous rocks and shallow water. In the ancient world, sailing was risky. There were no engines or modern maps. A storm could destroy a ship, and a wrong turn could crash it into the shore. The pharaohs helped sailors find their way and let them know they had reached a great city. Sailors weren't the only ones impressed. Writers and travelers from all over the world came to see the lighthouse. It became known as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, along with the Great Pyramid of Giza and the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. People were amazed by its size, beauty, and the clever way it used mirrors and fire to create light. It showed the power of human invention and the greatness of Alexandria. For over 1,000 years, the lighthouse stood tall. It survived many storms and earthquakes. But over time, the earth shook too hard. A series of earthquakes between the 10th and 14th centuries damaged the tower badly. By the late 1300s, the lighthouse had collapsed into ruins. Later, some of its stones were used to build other buildings, including a fortress on the same island. Today, the lighthouse is gone, but its story lives on. Divers in the 1990s found some of its remains under the water near Alexandria. Giant blocks of stone, statues, and columns still rest on the seafloor. Archaeologists study them to learn more about how the lighthouse was built and what it looked like. And around the world, lighthouses still stand on coasts to guide ships, just like the pharaohs did thousands of years ago. The Lighthouse of Alexandria reminds us of how clever and creative people can be. At a time when there were no machines, people used stone, fire, and mirrors to build something that helped others and amazed the world. It was not just a tower, it was a light of hope, safety, and human brilliance shining across the sea. Imagine a king standing tall in front of a grand temple. He wears a golden crown and holds a staff. Behind him, huge stone statues rise into the sky, each one carved to look just like him. Soldiers and workers hurry around him, and the people cheer. This is Ramses the Great, one of the most powerful and famous pharaohs in the history of ancient Egypt. Ramses the Great, also known as Ramses II, ruled Egypt for 66 years, from 1279 to 1213 BCE. He lived more than 3,000 years ago, but his name and face are still remembered today. He was the 3rd pharaoh of Egypt's 19th dynasty and is often called the greatest builder of Egypt. Ramses wasn't just known for his long reign. He was also a great warrior, a strong leader, and a man who loved to leave his mark on history. Ramses was born into a royal family. His father, Seti I, was also a pharaoh. Ramses was chosen to be the next king while he was still a teenager. His father gave him important jobs early in life, so Ramses learned how to lead at a young age. When his father died, Ramses became pharaoh and quickly began building temples, statues, and cities to show his power. One of Ramses' most famous achievements was the temple at Abu Simbel. This temple was carved into a cliff in southern Egypt. It has 4 huge statues of Ramses sitting on thrones, each over 60 feet tall. Inside the temple, the walls are covered with carvings showing Ramses as a great warrior and hero. Twice a year, sunlight shines through the temple's doorway and lights up statues inside. This shows how carefully the temple was planned and built. Ramses also built a great city called Pi-Ramesses. It became the capital of Egypt during his reign. It was full of grand buildings, palaces, and temples. This city showed the wealth and power of Egypt during Ramses' time. But Ramses was not only a builder, he was also a warrior. Early in his rule, Egypt was at war with a group called the Hittites, who lived in what is now Turkey. Ramses led his army into battle against them at a place called Kadesh. This was one of the biggest chariot battles in history, with thousands of soldiers and hundreds of chariots on both sides. Ramses claimed he won the Battle of Kadesh, and he had many carvings made showing him fighting bravely alone. In truth, the battle was probably a draw. Neither side clearly won. But years later, Ramses and the Hittites signed a peace treaty. This treaty is one of the oldest known in the world. It promised peace and friendship between the two empires and even included a royal marriage between Ramses and a Hittite princess. Ramses also focused on religion and believed deeply in the gods. He saw himself as chosen by the gods to rule. Many of his statues and carvings show him standing with or worshipping Egyptian gods like Amun, Ra, and Osiris. He wanted people to think of him not just as a king, but as a god on earth. He ruled Egypt during a time of peace and wealth. With no major enemies threatening Egypt, Ramses had the chance to focus on building and growing the empire. Egypt traded with other lands and became very rich. During his rule, Egypt reached one of its greatest periods of power. Ramses had a large family. He had many wives and over 100 children, some say more than 150. His favorite queen was Nefertari. He built a special temple for her next to his own at Abu Simbel. The temple for Nefertari is one of the few in Egypt dedicated to a queen. On the walls she is shown standing as tall as Ramses, which was rare in Egyptian art. Ramses lived to be over 90 years old, which was extremely rare at the time. Most people in ancient Egypt did not live past 40. When he died, he was buried in a grand tomb in the Valley of the Kings. His mummy was later found and is now kept in a museum in Egypt. Scientists who studied his body found that he had arthritis and dental problems, but he was still strong for his age. Even today, Ramses the Great is remembered as one of Egypt's most powerful and successful pharaohs. His buildings still stand, his statues still rise into the sky, and his name is still spoken thousands of years later. He ruled with strength, built with greatness, and made sure the world would never forget him. Imagine you are standing in the hot desert. The sun is bright and the air is dry. Suddenly you see something in the distance. It looks like a giant statue rising out of the sand. As you walk closer, it becomes clear. It has the body of a lion and the head of a man. Its face is calm and proud. Its paws stretch far in front of it. You are looking at the Great Sphinx of Giza. The Great Sphinx is one of the oldest and largest statues in the world. It sits near the famous pyramids in Egypt. It was carved out of one big piece of limestone. No one knows the exact year it was made, but most experts think it was built about 4,500 years ago. That was during the time of the Old Kingdom in ancient Egypt. Many people believe that the face of the Sphinx was made to look like a pharaoh. A pharaoh was a king of ancient Egypt. Some scholars think the face may belong to Pharaoh Khafre. Khafre also built one of the pyramids nearby, but no one is completely sure. There are no writings on the Sphinx to tell us who built it or why. The Sphinx is huge. It is about 240 feet long and 66 feet tall. That is longer than a football field and as tall as a 6-story building. Its eyes are over 6 feet tall. Its ears are over 3 feet long. Its nose is missing. Some people think it was destroyed by wind and time. Others think it was broken off on purpose. A drawing from the 1500s shows the Sphinx without a nose, so it has been missing for hundreds of years. In ancient times, people may have thought the Sphinx had special powers. It faced the rising sun, and some believed it watched over the pyramids. Long ago, sand covered most of the Sphinx. People forgot about it for many years. Only its head stuck out above the sand. In the 1800s, explorers began to dig around it. Slowly, they uncovered the whole body. Between the Sphinx's paws, there is a stone tablet called the Dream Stele. It was placed there over 3,000 years ago by a prince named Thutmose. The story says that one day, Prince Thutmose fell asleep in the shade of the Sphinx's head. In a dream, the Sphinx spoke to him. It told the prince to clear away the sand. If he did, the Sphinx would help him become king. Thutmose did clear the sand, and later he became Pharaoh Thutmose IV. People believed the Sphinx had kept its promise. Over the years, the Sphinx has needed repairs. Wind, sand, and time have worn it down. People have tried to fix it many times. In the past, some repairs were not done well, and they caused damage. Today, experts use science to study the Sphinx and protect it. They try to stop cracks and keep it from breaking down more. The Sphinx is made of limestone, which is soft and can wear away easily. The head was made from harder stone, which is why it lasted better than other parts. The Sphinx may have had a beard once. Pieces of a stone beard were found near the statue. These pieces are now in museums. Some experts think the beard was added later and was not part of the original statue. There are still many mysteries about the Sphinx. Some people wonder if there are hidden rooms or tunnels under it. So far, no secret rooms have been found, but the Sphinx still has secrets to tell. Over the centuries, the Sphinx has inspired stories, art, and legends. In Greek mythology, a Sphinx was a creature with a woman's head, a lion's body, and wings. It would ask people riddles and punish them if they got the answers wrong. But the Great Sphinx of Egypt is different. It does not have wings, and it seems to be a symbol of strength and wisdom. Millions of people visit the Sphinx every year. They come to see its huge size, its silent face, and to wonder about the people who built it so long ago. Standing in front of it, many people feel small. The Sphinx reminds us that ancient people were smart, skilled, and full of imagination. They made things that still amaze us today. Even after thousands of years, the Great Sphinx still lies in the sand, watching the sun rise over the desert. Its body may be old and worn, but its mystery lives on. Looking down, you see a long, shining ribbon of water winding through the land. It looks like a green path cutting through the yellow desert. Palm trees sway along its edges. Boats glide slowly across its surface. Farmers bend over rows of crops beside it. This is the Nile River, a thread of life that stretches across the dry land. It has been flowing for thousands of years. People have always lived near it, worked beside it, and depended on it for everything they need. The Nile is more than just a river. It is the reason Egypt exists at all. A long time ago, before there were cars, phones, or even books, the Nile was already there. The Nile is the longest river in the world. It flows through many countries in Africa, but in ancient times, the most famous place it passed through was Egypt. Almost everything in ancient Egypt depended on the Nile. The land around the Nile is desert. It is hot and dry. Not much can grow there, but the Nile brought life. Every year the river would flood. The water would rise and spread over the land. When the water went back down, it left behind dark, rich soil. This soil was perfect for growing food. That is why people lived near the Nile. They grew wheat, barley, and vegetables. The river made farming possible. Ancient Egyptians also used the Nile to travel. They built boats and sailed up and down the river. They used the boats to carry food, stones for building, and other goods. There were no cars or trucks, so the Nile was like a giant road made of water. The river connected people from different towns. It helped them trade and talk to each other. The Nile also gave the Egyptians fish to eat and reeds to make paper. These tall plants, called papyrus, grew along the river. People cut them, pressed them, and dried them to make something like paper. They wrote stories, laws, and records on it. Without the Nile, they could not have done that. The Nile River is home to many animals. One of the most famous is the Nile crocodile. These large reptiles can grow longer than a car and are very strong. They hide in the water and wait for fish, birds, or other animals to come close. Then they snap their jaws shut in one quick bite. long ago, ancient Egyptians were both afraid of crocodiles and amazed by them. They even had a crocodile god named Sobek. Crocodiles are still found along the river today, though not as many as in the past. Many birds also live near the Nile. Some, like herons and egrets, walk in the shallow water looking for fish. Others, like kingfishers, dive into the river to catch their food. Hippos used to be common in the Nile, too. These huge animals spend most of the day in the water and come out at night to eat grass. Along the banks, you might also see frogs, turtles, and many kinds of fish. The Nile is full of life, from tiny bugs to big animals, all depending on the water to survive. The Nile was not just helpful, it was also important to the Egyptians' beliefs. They thought the river was a gift from the gods. They even had a god of the Nile named Hapi. They believed Hapi caused the floods and helped crops grow. When the flood came each year, they were thankful. A good flood meant good food. A bad flood meant hunger. Many of Egypt's great cities were built along the Nile. One of the most famous is Thebes. Another is Memphis, which was once the capital. Even the pyramids are not far from the Nile. The large stones used to build them were floated on boats down the river. Thousands of years passed. Egypt changed. New rulers came. The Greek king Alexander the Great came to Egypt. Then the Romans ruled. Later, Arab leaders took over. But the Nile stayed important. People still lived near it, used it for farming, and traveled on it. In the 1800s and 1900s, new technology began to change the Nile. Engineers built canals to move water where people needed it. They also built dams. One of the biggest is the Aswan High Dam. It was finished in 1970. It helped stop floods and store water for times when the river is low. It also helped make electricity for homes and schools. But the dam also caused problems. Before the dam, the river brought rich soil during floods. After the dam, the soil stayed behind the wall. Farmers had to use fertilizer to help their crops grow. Also, some fish and animals that lived in the river lost their homes. Still, many people think the dam helped Egypt grow and become stronger. Today, more than 100 million people live in Egypt, and most of them live near the Nile. Big cities like Cairo and Alexandria are along the river. Boats still move up and down the water, carrying goods and people. Farmers still plant crops along the riverbanks. The Nile has watched over Egypt for more than 5,000 years. It has seen the building of pyramids, the rise and fall of kings, and the growth of big cities. It has helped feed people, connect them, and inspire stories and songs. And even now, in the modern world, the Nile is just as important as ever.